Today we're going to look at spotting a scene. This is a scene from the second season of Fallout, which I haven't seen, so I have no context for what we're watching. So we're just going to take it as it is. And to start out, the first thing I like to do when I'm spotting something is just to watch it through and look for points where something significant is happening that I might want to emphasize with a musical gesture or some kind of an effect. So we're going to play through this thing from the beginning. I'm going to stop and bloviate when I think there's something worth acknowledging that I'm going to make a marker for as we do this. So it's not too long. It's about 2 minutes, so bear with me, but let's start from the beginning. Okay, so already right there, when we get to this reveal of this isopod chamber, it's a pretty dramatic moment. Like the camera switches from a close perspective of the main character's face to this very mysterious sci-fi environment, which is totally alien to us as normal human beings. So that feels like a moment that might need to be acknowledged. So I'm going to go ahead and just add a marker there so I'm aware that it's there. All right, let's pick it back up. Okay, getting a little help from the sound effects, so thank you, sound effects. This reveal of this name, clearly an impactful moment just going by the sound effects alone, but I think even without them, you would get the sense that this is an impactful moment because of the very deliberate camera movement that's happening beforehand, these very slow pans, these very beautiful shots, and then we hit this very high contrast name, which clearly has some significance for the character. So we're going to leave a marker here. And continuing on.
Shall I open it, Mr. Howard?
Just as a point of reference, it's the first line in this scene, so I'm going to leave a marker there so I'm aware that it's coming and get out of the way from a musical standpoint. So I'm going to use an acronym from one of my mentors, Jason Graves, and call this SOL, which doesn't mean what you think it means. It means start of line.
Shall I open it, Mr. Howard? Open it.
Oh, I felt that. Did you? All right, pod is empty. So this very important person in the main character's life seemingly is not where he had hoped they would be. So that deserves a marker. And not only that, but I also want to leave myself a secondary marker, which is when after he utters the line, open it, because we have this very slow
Open it.
We have this very slow and deliberate pan around his face, and then it cuts to the pod slowly opening, and then there's this really great kind of lengthy moving shot circling around him before it punches into his face and we get the reveal. This to me feels like a natural place to have some kind of build, creating some anticipation for the reveal that's eventually going to come. So I'm just going to roll back to the start of his line, or actually just after his line, and put another marker here saying start to build. Okay, jumping ahead. We see the empty pod. Let's continue.
What a shame. You bet on hope, Mr. Howard. And you lost.
Super Howard.
Okay, so you might think that the natural place to have a transition or some kind of musical gesture would be around this cut from very cold sci-fi environment to this next warm, assuming this is like a memory that he's recalling. So right on that hit, but I actually think the more impactful moment is here scrolling forward after the line deliveries too, which we don't want to step on top of. When he drops the phone and the phone hits the bottom of the path that it can travel, whatever. The phone hits the bottom of the frame or as far as it's going to go. That's kind of a moment to me that feels like there might be something to accentuate. So I'm going to put a marker there. Phone hit. Continuing.
Super Howard, you have your warrant arrest by the authority of the House Un-American Activities Committee.
We'll see. I'm not so sold on necessarily emphasizing the handcuffs being clamped together. It's already got a huge sound effect attached to it, so doing anything more might be too much, but we'll come back to it if we have to.
You've been searching all this time.
And that's the end of the scene. So this last section, no specific markers, at least right now, that I think are necessary to add. Just notice that this all feels like it's building from this moment when he's walking away from this woman and the emotion is rising. She's starting to cry. The pacing of the camera, the slow cut back to where he is right now in the present, falling to his knees. This all feels like it's part of one continuous emotional arc. So I'm not going to split that up with any kind of markers at this moment. But that's the scene. It's like 2.5 minutes, somewhere around there. Next up would be establishing some kind of tempo that works with the scene. So my DAW, your DAW probably starts with 120 beats per minute. And the way that I like to do this is simply turning on the metronome, hitting play, and seeing how the beats line up with picture, seeing just generally if they feel like they're matching the camera pacing. There's some symbiosis with the energy of what's happening on screen is really helpful. And it becomes really apparent really quickly when it's not the right choice, when you have the wrong tempo. So let's just scroll back to the beginning. I've turned on the metronome and we're just going to walk back and then I'll stop when I feel like I have enough time to assess. But this is just starting at the default 120 beats per minute. All right, just the pacing of the opening scenes, the opening clips. It's very slow paced and very almost grand. And I don't know that a tempo this fast is going to serve that. You know, one of the things that you can consider doing is working at a faster tempo. That actually gives you much more flexibility in terms of transitory moments, in terms of like lining up on beats and things, because they're happening more frequently. They more often occur near where an edit point might exist. But this is too fast for me. It's creating like an unnatural anxiety against the picture. So I'm going to slow this down substantially. Let's go to like 75 and just see what that feels like. And we'll just start from where we left off, more or less. That actually feels pretty good. Like, I like the deliberateness of it. It's very feels very constant and steady, which the camera work kind of feels very constant and steady to me, at least in the beginning of this. But just as an experiment, I'm going to boost it back up to 90 just to see how that feels in comparison.
Shall I open it, Mr. Howard?
All right, so this is super interesting. I think 75 beats per minute could actually work really well for something very slow, legato, melodic. An interesting phenomenon when I turned it up to 90 beats per minute is that the beats are occurring almost synchronous with a lot of the edits, which is interesting. It makes me wonder if the original music attached to the scene was composed close to 90 BPM and the editor maybe was working with the score when they were cutting it together so they could cut on musical emphasis points. So I'm going to go ahead and just start at 90 beats per minute. We might not stay there once I start ideating with melodic ideas and harmony stuff. It might change, but 90 feels very natural with the camera, the edit, not the camera movements per se, but the edit itself. So that's going to be my starting BPM. That's really all I want to talk about as far as a starting point. The next step is going to be ideating, like I said, creating small melodic fragments, maybe thinking about harmonic contexts and laying those out against the picture over the course of the whole cue. But before we wrap this one up, I want to talk about characterization. This character, I've seen the first season of the show. I never played Fallout, so I can't speak to it from that end. But this character is known as the Ghoul. And prior to the nuclear holocaust, which created this figure that we see now before us, he was a very accomplished Western actor in Hollywood. So all the flashback content you see, it shows him in this, he's dressed very California, but it's played by Walton Goggins, which helps emphasize the countryness of it because he's so good at that. But it's very much in the classical trope of a Western, spaghetti Western kind of thing. So he's wearing, even now, after the nuclear holocaust happened 200 years ago, he's still wearing a cowboy hat. The character he plays now is a bounty hunter, more or less. And he still carries, he's got spurs on. You can hear it when he's walking. He's got a vest. He's got a lot of swagger to him, much like a traditional spaghetti Western star would have had. And so thinking about that from a musical context, you could choose to play into that quite heavily, use tropes from that type of genre. So things very lyrical trumpet melodies, acoustic guitars or mandolins, these sounds that are kind of very much associated with that genre of film. I think that would be a little goofy considering how emotionally wrought this scene is, but it can play into certainly the way that we shape things melodically and harmonically. There's a lot of language from Western movie scores that could be leveraged in an interesting, more modern way that would at least echo what we're seeing on screen in terms of his characterization. The other thing that's really important that I wanted to point out is that this is a character who's been slowly declining and degrading over 200 years due to intense radiation exposure and decay. And you can see that in his body. I mean, he doesn't have a nose anymore. That is something that I think is very interesting and ripe for creative ideas. So it's this guy who formerly was this traditional, very cliche type of hero, but now he's been corrupted and he's got this decay aspect to him going on. So thinking about that, I wonder if maybe going down the path of something that sounds somewhat heroic and traditionally Western, but with some slight contrast or juxtaposition against some decayed qualities to the sounds or the instruments might be interesting. But that's getting ahead of ourselves because that comes after the next step, which is working on a piano reduction, coming up with melodic ideas and chords and all that good stuff. That's it for today. Do the YouTube thing, like and subscribe. It's great motivation to keep going, and I will catch you for part 2 when we look at piano reductions.